We are just days away from the Canadian foreign buyer ban taking effect, but will we see any positive impact from this? And how do they even plan on enforcing this ban? In today's video, I'm going to run through an article from Real Estate Magazine about the foreign buyer ban, and I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on this ban and whether or not I think we'll notice any impacts over the next few years. If you're new to my videos, my name is Jessie McLellan and I'm a realtor here in Durham region, and I make videos about what's going on in the real estate market in Durham region and the GTA. If you want to be kept up to date on what's happening in the area and in real estate, then please subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up. Hopefully you all had a great Christmas, and 2023 is right around the corner, so I figured why not talk about the foreign buyer ban that's coming into effect soon. So I have this article from realestatemagazine.ca here, and I'll link it in the comments so you can follow along as well if you want to. But it starts off by explaining that non-Canadians will be subject to a 2-year ban from purchasing a home in Canada. And right away, it jumps into the point that everyone always brings up, which is that foreign buyers represent such a small number of transactions, so it likely won't have that big of an impact on the Canadian real estate market. Now, I've heard this a million times, but I really wanted to dig into how accurate this was, so I did a quick search for myself. A lot of the information I found was about the percentage of current non-resident homeowners, but not the number of non-residents who are involved in transactions each year. According to Statistics Canada in 2017, non-residents owned about 3.4% of all homes in Toronto and 4.8% of homes in the Vancouver area. I also found a report from a very large brokerage in Toronto that said that only 3% of their sales in the last 10 years were to buyers outside of Canada. In comparison, a CMHC report determined that properties with at least one non-resident owner represented just 3.3% in Ontario. So according to the stats and information I can find, it doesn't really seem like foreign buyers are as active in the Canadian real estate market as some people would believe. Moving on in the article, to enforce the ban, anyone who knowingly helps a non-Canadian to buy a house could face fines of up to $10,000, in addition to the fines levied against the non-Canadian buyer. This means that lawyers, notaries, realtors, and financial brokers face a $10,000 fine if they knowingly help a foreign buyer or corporation to purchase Canadian residential property before January 1st, 2025, and that's $10,000 per offense. What is uncertain is how the regulations will be enforced and whether or not legal challenges will hinder the federal government's ability to enforce and collect their dues. Various legal firms across Canada pointed out that while this ban is passed and will be enforced by the federal government, the legislation of residential real estate is actually a provincial mandate. This could mean challenges to this new ban and uncertainty about whether or not the fine can and should be collected. Now, that's a really interesting point and something that they're definitely going to have to figure out. But I mean, should we take bets on whether this will be on the next CBC Marketplace report? For realtors, developers, and builders whose primary customers are overseas buyers, it may mean eating the cost of the fine in order to do business. Let's face it, paying $10,000 to the federal government on a $50,000 commission is steep, but it's still $40,000 in earnings multiplied by hundreds of units that helps keep the lights on. We've seen this behavior before with some real estate brokerages fined year after year for violations before finally having their license revoked. Now, I could see this happening if the $10,000 fine is the only punishment and it's just a drop in the bucket compared to what the potential profits could be, but I think there's going to be more to it than just that. Others will help foreign buyers become exempt by using legislative exclusions, such as students or those who marry and purchase with buyers exempt from the prohibition. Now, I am curious to see exactly what the list of exemptions are and how they plan on enforcing each scenario. And finally, the vast majority of realtors will just double down on servicing their Canadian resident clients and use their overseas contacts to help build their new immigrant client base. Honestly, I would bet the vast majority of realtors don't have that many overseas contacts, besides that one guy who won't stop calling them about air duct cleaning. Now, some agents absolutely do have clients and business contacts overseas and derive some of their business from assisting new Canadians who emigrate from all over the world. However, the vast majority of realtors only do a few transactions per year, let alone know a lineup of uber wealthy foreign investors with no other ties to Canada that are looking to purchase all of the Canadian real estate. According to the Canadian Real Estate Association, the federal government still needs to publish the regulations surrounding the legislation, and CREA does not have, at this time, any further details regarding the regulations themselves, its interpretations, how the legislation will be applied, and how it will be enforced. It's great to know that the government and the Canadian Real Estate Association don't really know what's going on, and it's really not that long before the ban comes into effect. According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, if a non-Canadian is convicted of having illegally purchased property, the Superior Court of the province in which the residential property is located may order the property to be sold. The Act establishes that any such court-ordered sale will result in the non-Canadian receiving no more than the purchase price paid for the residential property. Honestly, that just makes sense. I mean, you can't ban them from purchasing a property, but then allow them to profit if they do anyway and get caught. But honestly, for me, this just raises so many other questions, like what will happen if they're forced to sell and they end up getting less for the property, and who will be paying costs associated with selling a home. But what I'm really most interested to know is how this is going to be enforced. What role will the Canadian Real Estate Association or our provincial councils or our local associations and boards play in this? Will they have their own punishments or fines for realtors who are involved in this? So many questions. Meanwhile, U.S. buyers have been buying up recreational property ahead of January 1st. A recent Royal LePage survey of U.S. citizens living in border states conducted by Ledger found that 75% of those who currently own recreational property in Canada said that they made their purchase after the 2-year foreign buyer ban was announced. And honestly, that just really surprised me that 3/4 of US citizens in border states who own recreational property purchased after the ban was announced. And according to the survey, it very clearly influenced a significant amount of people to purchase before the ban came into effect. Now, I also wonder what effect this legislation could have on how Canadians who are looking to purchase a home in the US will be received. Because we have a significant amount of Canadian snowbirds who like to travel to warmer states like Florida during our coldest months of the year, and they own property there and want to continue to buy property there. I wonder if there'll be any ramifications or pushback from the US or exemptions for Americans trying to purchase a recreational property in Canada. And that's pretty much it for the article, but I do really want to know what your thoughts are. Do you think this will actually do anything to help the housing situation in Canada? Do you think they'll be able to enforce it properly? Leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. Personally, I think it's a lot more likely that the projected 400,000 plus new Canadians that immigrate to Canada every year have a lot greater of an effect on the Canadian housing market than foreign buyers do. And that's obviously nothing against new Canadians, but most people who immigrate here are going to settle around Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal, and they need a place to live. And that's adding demand to the housing market. So I feel like whatever demand is lost from the foreign buyer ban will easily be outweighed by the increased immigration Canada is expecting over the next few years. Let me know your thoughts below. If you have any questions or just want to chat, my contact info is in the description. Thanks so much for sticking around until the end. I hope you found this video helpful. Have a very happy new year, and I'll see you again in 2023. Bye!